Thank you, everybody, for joining for another episode. Today, I'm with Greg Winterrowd, who is an experienced senior program manager at Evanta, which is a Gartner company. And they are an executive networking company that brings together C-level leaders to collaborate on key issues that they collectively deal with. Greg has a demonstrated history of working in the professional training and coaching industry. He's skilled in photography, video, film, and event management, as well as public speaking. And he earned his Bachelor of Arts degree focused in media theater arts from Montana State University-Bozeman. My story crosses paths with Greg's with an organization called OASC, or Oregon Association of Student Councils. So we'll talk more about that in our conversation. But without further ado, Greg, thanks for coming on to chat today.
What's up, Chris? Thanks for having me.
So what I'm interested in talking about is entrepreneurship, or thinking like an entrepreneur,
Right.
and then just kind of your path and career. But before we dive into, before I tell a story, I'm curious if I understand like the textbook definition of Evanta. Tell me a little bit about like what does that look like in a day-to-day for you? What are you actually doing there?
So with Evanta, the company actually started almost 20 years ago, and there was a need to bring C-level executives together in a way that they could really overcome challenges, but then understand that they're not alone. And our co-founder, or our founder at the time, asked them what was important and what would matter to them in terms of creating events or gatherings, and they gave him very specific, direct feedback. A lot of the issues that they face aren't, alone. So like I work personally with chief information security officers, and these executives are the ones that protect large businesses like Taco Bell or Walmart or you name it, Costco, from getting breached. And there's a lot of pressure on that one specific position. They have teams, obviously, but it's like they're between the CEO and then everyone else. And it's really helpful for them to come together with peers, either in their vertical, another retail, or outside their vertical. Maybe it's a different industry that they could shine some light on the challenges that they face. So we bring them together intentionally. We curate content based on what they want. And my job specifically is kind of to quarterback a specific region and make sure that we're delivering the best experience for all of them. And then obviously bringing in some other perspectives from sponsors who pay for the thing.
Yeah, I actually have never gotten a detailed description of what you're doing now, which is far different than what you were doing when I met you. And that's where that in my experience, in my experience of my video entrepreneur days versus what I'm doing now is on like a surface level completely different. But there's so many like absurd skills and things that I picked up and just experiences that completely affect how I operate today. So I wanted to start out with a couple of stories of the first, my first memories of like encountering Greg Winterrowd, who at the time, as I was a high school student, I was like completely like confused and like not like I didn't know how someone like Greg was like got to where he was, which from my perspective was like very, very popular and successful. Come to find out, it's not even true at all. But just kidding. But my first memory was at OASC. They have this thing called Fall Conference, and it's like I would describe it from a outsider's perspective of like, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,500 kids, high school kids that are all in leadership positions that show up at Seaside in Oregon at this conference center.
Beach.
Yeah,
right.
And they have these breakout sessions, and I remember going to a breakout session that was probably on, I don't know, video or incorporating video into...
Yeah, in high school, I was really big into incorporating visual mediums and interactivity into like assemblies and finding ways to make things more entertaining.
Yeah.
So that was what I knew, and I had just finished film school, so I was doing a session, I'm sure, on how to like incorporate videos and production and value into these what could be boring assemblies, bringing in projectors, spotlights, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that was from my, like, I was a student body president, or sophomore class president at the time, and I had like made videos for assemblies. So the student body officers were like, "Oh, Chris, you have to go to this talk on like incorporating video." So, here I am, this like nerdy, like underdeveloped sophomore walking into a class of a bunch of other like leadership kids.
Yeah, you were still 6'8" though, something like that, right?
Just a string being like 160 pounds. But I remember Greg coming in and he like said hello, and then you just like walked out of the classroom, and there were older kids that like knew that something was coming because they had encountered or worked with you before. And then you came back in the classroom doing your Velociraptor impression, which I'm sure can you still do like the you could probably do it better than me, but it's honestly probably been like 10 years since I've done that. I laid that. Give it a go. Just try to rest. Just like the sound. I used to be able to do it, and then same thing. I haven't done it for so long, and it's like my dad voice or whatever it doesn't facilitate the Velociraptor sound as well. But you came in and you were like fully in character of a Velociraptor, and you were making like clicking noises and stuff, and then you jumped up on the table in front of all these students, and then like whatever, you continued that, and then all of a sudden you were just like, okay, anyways, and then you just switched characters back into like, I'm Greg, and you started talking. And that to me was like, I remember, because you were also, you're a taller person. Are you 6'7", 6"? We're 6'6". Very similar. Yeah. I'm 6'6" as well. So I remember looking at you as like, here's a very tall person who's capturing the audience, like the attention of everyone in this room, and he's like being like ridiculous. Which for me at the time, like freshman Chris was the most shy and like recluse person ever. Like I wanted to be like confident and in front of people, but I was so embarrassed and just like shy. And I saw you and was like, holy cow, like how did that guy do that? Because that was I was very interested in being able to do that.
I think back to middle school, and we'd be at the middle school dances, and I'd be like a head above everyone else. I felt completely uncomfortable. So I knew from an early age at that point that I needed to somehow own it, like you're kind of talking about. And I attribute OASC with giving me that empowerment and that confidence to be like, I am who I am, this is what I do, and let's have fun while we're at it. I will say, I should give credit for the Velociraptor. I had a science teacher in high school. He was our physics teacher, and he was the best teacher, one of the best teachers I've ever had, and he did the Velociraptor. So I can't say I invented this dinosaur creature that like made me popular at OASC. I probably perfected it and took it to the next level, and kind of
standing on the shoulders of giants, really.
Yeah, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I just want to make sure that Mr. Murray gets his credit where it's due, because I mean, I modeled a lot of my presentations and my teaching and any sort of motivational stuff I did on teachers that got my attention and that made me feel like I should be there and I had a reason to listen. And when you think about a physics teacher jumping on his like laboratory table doing different dinosaur impressions or whatever, it doesn't really like add up, but those are some of my favorite classes. I still remember a lot of the physics principles that I learned, and I felt like I was engaged. So I definitely, I guess I'll say, stole that, and I think it worked here and there for, engaging the audience so that you kind of like warm everyone up with some humor, and then you bring in that solid message, and then maybe finish with a bang. So
yeah, and that actually is that, or specifically and I can't remember the exact time that I heard this, but I watched a Jerry Seinfeld interview, and then I later saw a similar analysis of Chris Farley, and I remember that it was around this time, and I saw you and some other people at OASC that were leveraging humor to capture people's attention. And Jerry Seinfeld in particular talks about how humor is like, it's actually, there's power dynamics when you're in a room, and stand-up comedians actually have control over the entire room the whole time that they're on stage. And the good ones know how to engage or riff off of the crowd to maintain control. Because if you're telling a joke and then there's some guy in the crowd that's like, that's what your mother said last night or whatever, you know, and everybody laughs at that guy now. If you don't like spar with that person quickly and immediately take that and then flip it back and put him in his place, you could actually lose the entire room over one comment like that. And they like steal the thunder basically, you know. And then the Chris Farley analysis that I would say that Velociraptor memory that I have was, if you look at Chris Farley's, like any of his popular SNL skits, he actually
I was just watching
like the best of Chris Farley,
the Matt Foley stuff with my 9-year-old and 5-year-old the other night. And
so
like,
the first, do you remember the
hilarious.
first thing that he does when he comes in? It's like literally he comes on the screen on the scene, and then he falls and trips and just smashes a table. And people were saying that he actually was super, super nervous, even as he got very successful. And he would always have these butterflies and just like anxiety before the show, right? And so he would always start off, get a super cheap laugh by just self-deprecating, or, you know, stumbling, being an idiot. And now everybody's laughing at him. And now he's in the zone and he's like rolling. So when I had heard that, and then I saw you do this as a sophomore, and I was like, that's what I need to do. Like I need to start my,
you need to fall on a table.
Yeah, exactly. I need to break my leg and have people laugh at me. But I feel like that's something that I like naturally started doing, where it's like, and I'm sure you have similar experiences in high school or even at work. I like will just go up and start talking, and the way that I say something, people laugh, and it's intentional. But I'm like, I get nervous when I go talk in front of people, but I also know that if I can get them to laugh at something that I say early on, it immediately like just erases all the pressure or the anxiety.
I mean, if you can disable the heckler, but you also don't want to do it in a way that makes you look like a villain or the bad guy. You want to bring the entire audience onto your side and put that person in their place gently. That way everyone sees the empathy and sees that like, oh, we're all in this together. And then most of the audience will then be like, okay, I don't want to get put in my place because, you know, this guy or this gal is obviously very talented in, you know, owning the situation. Totally. There's some. I used to go to open mics with my roommate back in like 2000 something, and he would take the stage, and then other people would take the stage, and it's really interesting to watch, especially new comics try and interact with a crowd. Now, granted, open mics, it's like mostly comics watching comics, but there's still some, you know, super drunk people that fell off the regular show. They're in this like back room, and they just think the night's all about being funny, so they're gonna like interject as much as they can. And it was really cool to see the ones that could handle it well, and then also the ones that couldn't. So I think that going into meetings, like you're saying, is the same thing. Like get the group on your side, make sure that everyone's ready to listen when it's time to listen, but also that you're still having fun, because I can't emphasize having fun enough when it comes to just working or you know, your day-to-day life, because otherwise what's the purpose? What's the reason? Yeah, totally. And going off of stand-up into the other prominent memory that I have, this is because sophomore year at fall conference was the first encounter that I had with OASC, and then I then went to summer camp which is so funny. Like, and I know we can talk about this more later, but just I tell people that like I work with now that I went to this high school leadership camp in the summertime, and it's like there's no way. You just have to say, yeah, I was a nerd. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, there's no. But like a really cool nerd. Yeah, like we had a lot of fun, and we were surrounded by other really cool nerds as well. So, but at this OASC summer camp, they had a talent show.
And I remember in past years, some people would do stand up, and it was like a goal of mine that I, like, the first time I went, I was like, I need to do stand up at OASC, and I'm so scared. It's like it was the most terrifying thing that I possibly could have said I wanted to do. And finally, my last year at summer camp, which would have been between my junior and senior year, I was like, I'm going to go give a stand-up I told, like, in this boundary breaking session, I had, like, told everybody that I was going to do stand-up. And I had, like, written notes leading up to the conference. So I was like, I had been thinking about it, but I just wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it. Right. And anyways, I went up and I basically did a 10-minute little bit about a bunch of tall jokes, just like things that I had encountered being tall and just like funny things.
For the audition?
No, well, I don't know if I did do. I think I obviously told a couple jokes. I didn't do everything, but okay. I remember you coming after the audition because I didn't go into everything. It was just like, give us like a 30-second sample, and you were like, this is going to be really funny. Like this is going to be good. And then the other part was right afterwards. When I did it live, I had the crowd was like rolling on the floor laughing, and like my probably second or third to last joke, and then everyone was like, gathers themselves, and I'm waiting, and then I had two more jokes to tell, and I remember that after I was done, you were like, that was freaking hilarious. That was like you crushed that, and by the way, you should have stopped two jokes earlier because you had like you would have been a legend if you would have just dropped the mic and left.
Walked off the stage.
Yeah. And I remember being like, I knew exactly, like it was like one of those things where it was such great specific feedback, but it also was like encouraging that I was like, you're totally right. I did crush it, and I could have been even better had I done this thing. And that was anyways, that was that moment probably. I've told my wife this before, like having a room of 500 students just like laughing, and then they all like stood up and they were clapping at the end. The fact that they would do that for every person, even if you've never played the piano and tried to play a song, doesn't matter because I felt like I was on top of the world. But that was my other key point of like that. From that point, I was like, I had so much confidence going into assemblies, going into class meetings. I was like, I can make people laugh. Like I know that I can take control of a room and lead by using humor.
Yeah, no, and I think that stage really set a lot of people up for success because, to your point, pretty much everyone got a standing ovation. But there's still that magical feeling of getting up in front of people, very vulnerable, sharing ideas or concepts or things that you think are cool or worth sharing, and then either getting laughs or getting applause or getting, people just excited about whatever talent you have. And I don't know, I considered that like my home stage when it came to developing different comedy things that I did outside of OASC. And it was great because it was a very welcoming environment, and you could make mistakes and it didn't matter. Yeah. So totally. I loved OASC for that, for sure.
Do you have, this is something that I've reflected on, and like I would say that stand-up would be, as weird as it sounds to someone that doesn't understand OASC, would be like a key inflection point of my life. I mean, OASC in general, the experiences I had around that and student leadership changed who I would have been had I not encountered those things. But do you have any memories of, or like big moments in your life where like, oh, this was something that this changed the outcome of my life dramatically?
I mean, I think it's probably because we're talking about OASC that I'm thinking of this instance. But when I was in high school, I only went to OASC for 1 year, and I had gone to the national program, which brings all the leaders across the country together. And we had this like fun group of high schoolers that were doing our thing, and we came back from this national program, and they're like, you should go to the state thing. So I was like, okay, I'll go to the summer camp, and got a group of those people to actually help me do a car wash so that I could even pay for it, because it was like $200 or $300 at the time. And we get to camp, and we were basically just a clique. And this camp, for those that don't know about it, is really about expanding your boundaries and, you know, appealing to the crowd and networking and meeting people from all over. But we had just had this awesome week together as a group of like probably 6 or 7 of us, and now we were at this camp together. So it was almost like we were like the national clique, or the group that really wanted to spend our time together. And we got into trouble. We did things that we probably shouldn't have done. I mean, it was like stupid high school stuff, but we were just finding ways to be really funny and get huge laughs, but also at the expense of, you know, maybe the campus, or just maybe one specific kid or whatever. And it was noticed to the point where we got pulled in trouble, and the leaders at the time were very disappointed, and, you know, put it all into perspective for us. And we had some really eye-opening conversations. And yet I still really loved the organization and the kind of the confidence that it gave me. And so I think one of the inflection points was when I applied to be a junior counselor the following year. I was denied. And it was really hard for me to be denied in a position like that when, you know, I was a ASB officer in high school. I did have all this success, and I really hadn't experienced failure like that before. And so I really tried again the next year to be a JC, a junior counselor, was denied again. And then I was like, listen, like, I want to find a way to get back to this camp and give back. I want to find a way to influence and do the right thing. And I talked to the program director at the time and gave her a bunch of ways that I could get involved with, like doing video, or ultimately what became the tech crew. I was basically setting that up. And I got a call. It was like, I think the day or two before this meeting that they have to bring all the JCs together, and someone had dropped out. And Nancy called me and was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? We have the meeting in 2 days. I know you're in Montana, so we could like maybe bring you in over the phone or whatever. And I was like, no, I'll be there. And I just drove overnight to go to that meeting. And I think the reward for me was sitting in that room amongst all those people that I admired, and all those older senior counselors that I had seen before and thought like, wow, these are, you know, the legends. And being like, I'm here. I'm doing it. I made it. And that was a big impactful moment. I also had in the back of my mind, kind of like people talk about imposter syndrome, and being like, am I qualified for this? Should I be here? Am I going to, like, do you ever have that feeling like, am I going to yell something during this important meeting? Or am I going to say something completely inappropriate? Or like,
and then no one's going to laugh, and they'll be like, get out right now.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, like shocked. So I think that was a big thing, and that was one of the stories that I told a lot at camp, was to say, like, you're going to have failures, there's going to be mistakes. It's how you learn from those mistakes and how you grow, and then what you do as a result of those mistakes to find success.
That I had totally forgotten until you said that, but your rejection story, that's the other thing that I applied to be a JC, because you were doing tech crew, but it was just you and Jesse, I think, at the time, and you like hadn't like brought in other people. And I remember that I applied to be a junior counselor after my last year, got rejected, and I was just like I put so much effort into this application to get back to camp, and I was like so pumped. And then they send you their, you know, stock email. It's like, oh, you know, sorry, you didn't get it.
Right.
And then you sent an email a couple weeks later, and I think that it was titled like, you know, like JC, like attention JC rejects or something like that.
Right.
And you were like, hey,
rough.
anyone that didn't make it to be a JC, like we actually are going to expand the tech crew and hire another like video person. And when I saw that, it was like, from being in the dumps to like, this is even better. Like, this is literally like, who cares about JC? Like this, I can, and it was like, you had all these questions about like technical camera stuff. Like, do you know what I don't even remember all the stuff.
I remember one of them was, do you know what a mini DV tape is?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I had worked with other people, and I was frustrated at the like level of knowledge that they didn't have. So I just wanted to like cover the basics, and I figured if you could at least like have
answer that
conversation,
yeah, it was like what's HD or standard definition. I don't know. There's a bunch of things, and I remember filling it out, and I was like, oh yeah, like I know all this, and I was submitting this. I don't know how many people ended up applying, but I feel
hundreds.
Like you said, which is total BS, but you were like, okay, so, like kept dragging on the interview process of like weeding through these applications when in reality you're probably just like, oh shit, I forgot to get back to this guy.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Toying with you.
Yeah.
No, I think that was a really cool thing because I, was rejected. I wanted to create a way for more people to give back. And just leadership in general, like when you look at good and bad managers, people that are in charge of other people, I think it's important to find like what someone is really good at and then emphasize that as part of the team so that they can contribute that thing. Not to say that you wouldn't have been a good JC, but maybe your true talent was bringing that extra effort to the tech crew. And so I was really proud that OASC allowed me to grow that team. I mean, by the time we were in our heyday, we probably had like 6 or 7 people producing content for the program. And we were all self-funded. We were making, I think, more money than the JCs and SCs. Right. And a lot of times, I don't want to say we were having more fun, but like a lot of people wanted to get involved with what we were doing because
more
of,
than
I think
the
way that we did it. So I was really proud of the tech crew.
No, and that's what I was going to say is that the tech crew, which kind of goes in the next topic, that, well, I guess give me, because it was video, but tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. I was thinking the other day that entrepreneur is such a hard word, especially when most of the people that have to use it didn't go to college. Right. It's like, they could have come up with a simpler, like easier to spell and pronounce word. But regardless, the entrepreneurial journey that you went on that involved, I know there's like Prophecy Productions. You did some other after school stuff for yo-yos. And anyways, to tell me a little bit about that, what inspired that and how did that all go?
I give a lot of that credit to my dad. He was a salesman for 30 plus years, and I would be just like in the car while he was having sales calls or on the way to things. He'd be, talking business. And I really had a kind of an eye-opening experience as a kid as to, what self-made success looks like. And when I was in high school, I didn't really want to get like a job at McDonald's or something like that where I was just doing the same thing over and over again. So I went around to my neighbors and mowed yards and did yard work and found, a couple of clients here and there that would keep me busy on the weekends and ultimately pay for all the things that I wanted to do. And going back to my dad, it was funny. At one point he pointed out that it was the gas that he was buying for the lawnmower that was paying for that business, but
he didn't charge you for it?
It's a startup cost. No, After a while he did. But then I went into college, and going into college, one of my first jobs that wasn't self-started was painting houses for a company that recruited college students to do that. And the guy that was running it was like a year older than me. I knew him from high school, and I was thinking like, if he can do this, I can do this. And then I started looking at it, and I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily need this organization to back me up. Technically, I probably did in terms of like liability and insurance and things like that. But I was like, I can do what he's doing, and I could get friends to paint with me. And I like working with people that I like. So a friend of mine, Dustin, and I started Monet-driven painting, a play on words, of the artist Monet, but also money, because we were college students and we were money-driven. So we painted for like 2 or 3 summers and had a lot of fun, but a lot of success. And, we were outside, like just living the dream. And from there, I, graduate college, as you mentioned, with the film degree. And there's a lot of different ways into the film industry. One is that you start at like a PA and you work up and I've seen my friends from film school do that, and now they're all like producers and like doing really well. So I'm very envious of those positions. But I was thinking like, and I had gone down to LA, and I was like, I don't want to go to LA. I want to stay in the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, I've started a painting company. I've started a, landscaping company. Let's not give it too much color, but I mowed yards. And then I was thinking like, well, for now, let me do what I want, and I'm going to start a production company. So that's what I did out of college, with the goal of trying to create content that I was really proud of and excited to produce. It's funny because I thought I'd be like making music videos and like really cool creative pieces, but it ultimately was a lot of like procedural stuff and website media and weddings and just things that people needed video of that I could also edit. And as you know, because you even did some editing for me, a lot of that kind of stuff gets monotonous and kind of takes the creative flair out of it. So I started shifting my interest into another passion, which is teaching and working with kids. And at that point, I started teaching kids how to do editing in after-school programs and summer camps. I taught them how to do improv. I taught them how to act and just film and do all the processes of storytelling with a visual medium. And then randomly I did like a Connects and Lego class, and then I did like a paper airplane class, and I started finding all these things that kids were really interested in that I was also interested in. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to make potato cannons and stuff, and thought might as well bring some of that influence to these kids. So we did like a model rocket class. It was super fun. And then it was around 2009 that my friend had graduated from college at the U of O. He was an architect degree student, and for his final project, or one of his projects, he had to create a physical product using CAD, and he created a yo-yo, and he was showing me this metal yo-yo, and I was very impressed by it. And he's like, yeah, I actually started selling it to the yo-yo community, and he paid for the rest of his college with it. So I thought, okay, these things can sell. That sounds fun. I used to like to yo-yo. We've been friends since we were in preschool. What if we did a class on yo-yoing? And we created a company called Yo-Yo University. And we went for 3 or 4 years teaching over 5,000 kids how to yo-yo properly.
And you sold those yo-yos at the Yo-Yo University, right?
Yeah, we would get like 50 kids into these classes, and then we'd start them all off with a basic yo-yo, this plastic yo-yo with a ball bearing inside, and then to kind of get to that next level, a lot of times it was easier and better to use metal yo-yos. So we would sell Collins yo-yos initially, and then we started working with another company to sell their metal yo-yos, and it really developed into a nice business because there were so many dynamics to it. We felt like we were giving back to the community, and we were having fun. I mean, we were yo-yoing. We were playing with toys for work.
So it seems like you did all that stuff, and then I remember, because speaking of editing, I remember after the first summer that I worked at an OASC camp, you approached me and were like, "Hey, Chris, like I shoot these wedding videos, and I don't have time to edit them. Would you be interested in editing them?" And that was basically my like summer job, or not summer, during the school year job. Like I'd get done studying, and then you'd like mail a hard drive to me or whatever, and then there'd be 3 weddings on it, and I would just like sit there and crank away at editing these wedding videos, and then send back the files to you and stuff. But yeah. I remember people being like, "What do you do? Like, what are you doing right now?" It's like Thursday night and like 9 o'clock, and Chris is like editing some wedding video as a college student. Is really random. But I remember feeling like I can't remember for sure, but I feel like it was like $500 a wedding that you were paying me, which at the time was fantastic for the amount of time that I was putting in. I was like, this is like a no-brainer, and I had money to go do all the fun college stuff that I wanted to do. So That also was another thing where I had made videos before, but then there's that technical aspect of just repetition and like, you know, keystrokes and shortcuts and stuff to go faster. That then allowed me to do other projects later far better because I was so like, what's the word? Fluent. Fluent in the software. But yeah, I remember, I think somewhere on like my old iTunes hard drive, I have like the folder of wedding songs that we would always use.
Right.
And it's so funny from being on the editing side of wedding videos, because most people don't like watch hundreds of wedding videos before they watch their video.
Which is weird, I think, but yeah.
So you realize that it's just like every single wedding is exactly the same. Like, but everybody thinks that it's like so precious. And I mean, it is, right? I'm not doing a great job marketing wedding videos, but I'm not in that business anymore. So
yeah.
But it's really like, we're going to do the cake cutting. I guess we could do How Sweet It Is, or, you know, Cut the Cake by the Average White Band. Like, let's just take a pick of these 5 songs that are like always used for these moments, you know.
Well, and then, I mean, with technology evolving, it turned into just like short, like, what can I put on social media, or what's like a 4-minute version of the entire wedding. Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's about when I was just like, okay, I think I've had enough fun in this industry. Yeah. And I actually, around then, started doing another thing where I worked with a company that called Paparazzi Tonight that does photo booths, but like live in-person ones. And so I was still kind of in this industry, but then we were also doing like corporate gigs, and that really opened my eyes up to the potential for making money from corporations rather than individuals. Yeah.
How does, so you had a whole bunch of entrepreneurial things that you've done. What was the jump, or what was the cause to then say, okay, I can't do this anymore, or maybe it wasn't I can't, but I choose not to do this, and I'm going to take a job. Did you go straight to Evanta after, or was there another like corporate type job before getting to Evanta?
My one and only corporate job prior to Evanta was working for Disney in like 2004. But yeah, as an entrepreneur, and that was during college, the college program. The transition was that with Yo-Yo University, Colin and I both had kids 6 days apart, and our schedules became a little bit hectic, and we also had this person, his son and my son separately. We had these people to, you know, be responsible for, and we needed better benefits and insurance and things like that, stuff that's you don't really think of when you're creating a business. And looking back, I have a lot of ways that I would run Yo-Yo University a lot better now, and I think I still could, and I've even considered, you know, opening that business back up. But at the time, we needed stability and an option that would be a little bit more consistent. And as you know, in terms of creating your own business, entrepreneurs work constantly. So I would be, you know, working from morning all the way into the night a lot of times. And that just wasn't really feasible with my situation at the time. So I had a friend that was working at this company, Evanta, and he, you know, brought me in for an interview. And I mean, the average life cycle at Evanta, I think at the time, was like maybe 1.5 years or 2 years, and I've lasted there for 8 years. So I've seen a lot of corporate change. The company originally was owned locally in Oregon, and we were acquired probably 3 years ago now, maybe 4, by a company called CEB. And then, like, literally as we were getting our laptops and all the infrastructure for that new company, then Gartner bought CEB, and we went through another acquisition. So,
and then it stabilized.
And then it stabilized, yeah.
And so how do you feel like, or is it possible, I'm kind of projecting now, that your entrepreneur experience affected the way that you operate at Evanta, and that's maybe one of the reasons that you've stuck around longer, or does that have nothing to do with it?
No, I think that's exactly why I've been successful and have stuck around. It's because I've found ways to to your point, find keystrokes. Essentially, I've tried to make my job easier and make myself more productive so that I enjoy my work and so that I'm not like doing tedious things, but I'm able to be successful by finding not shortcuts, but yeah, I mean, I guess shortcuts, ways to just do things in a way that works better for me. And it's funny because a lot of times people will ask like, hey, how'd you do this? How'd you do this? And it's like, well, I have this like weird way that I do it. It's not like, what's the word I'm looking for now?
Repeatable by somebody else or something?
Yeah. And so that's one thing that I'm currently working on, is trying to find ways that I can help others in the business now that I'm a veteran that really knows how to do my job, and ways that I can make other people have an easier
that's interesting to me because it sounds like maybe touching in like automation a little bit, which is something that I'm obsessed with. I would say it's not shortcuts. It's like identifying where the value is really at and spending your time on those things instead of getting lost in data entry, for example, or something, which at the end of the day, the person attending the event doesn't care how his name badge was printed. You know, he just needs a name badge, and then or whatever.
They do when they want it accurate. Yeah. But no, it's true. They don't care how it got there. They just want it to look nice and whatever. And as a senior program manager, one of my biggest jobs is really to create relationships with people and gain trust. So you can't really automate that, and that's where I enjoy
and that's where you spend your time.
Yeah, is focusing on like actual human personal touches.
What's do you have an example of something? Is automation the right word that you're talking about, or is it like what's a specific thing?
Maybe
that
like simplified
shortcut,
simplified workflows. I don't have any like machines that I can like push one thing in and something else comes out. Working with CISOs, I learn a lot about automation. I learn a lot about AI and BI and all these different tools that these leaders are using to take the workload off of their talent and people so that their talent and people can focus on things that people should be focusing on. But yeah, I'd say I've found better workflows, and I've found ways to customize tools to work better for me as well. Yeah.
Let's see. What would you say, just in context of everything that we've been talking about, or your life, I guess, what would you say you're most proud of? And I want to also say, and this is not too sarcastic, because I do feel this about my own kids and family. You can't say your wife, kids, or family. So let's assume that those are your most proud of, creations in the world.
Yeah.
But what are you most proud of outside of your family?
That's a really good question, especially when you take it outside of the family. I'm really proud of, I think, the connections that I've made and the people that I've worked with. I really like, even just having this call with you and reflecting on the, then to now and all the different facets of my life that I've been a part of. I'm really proud of that. It's fun to have diversity in your background, and it's really cool to think that I've touched on different people's lives, and in some cases, I know the people like you that I've impacted doing a Velociraptor impression, but in some cases I'm sure I've impacted other people that I don't even really know what that looks like, because I know there's people in my life that have impacted me that they probably don't know it. And I even make an intentional effort to let people know when they have impacted me. So when, like you're saying, when someone does something or creates an opportunity for you, I think it's important to be thankful. And so I've done a really intentional job of making sure to give credit where credit is due. But I'm sure there's other people that I could even, pinpoint to these life-changing moments, and I don't know. I think I'm proud of that because I've worked really hard to do that. the teacher that kind of taught me that was my leadership teacher in high school. So I should give Robin Beeler some credit as well, because her big thing was be thankful. I mean, it was even on her license plate.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you that question first because I have a follow-up, which is, from my perspective, you're absolutely right. One of the reason I reached out to you was this podcasting thing it's kind of a fun hobby, but I just enjoy the deeper conversations that I have with people. And it's a mixture of, like, I interviewed my old history teacher, interviewed my college chemistry teacher, and then I've also interviewed just business people that I admire or respect, or people that have been impactful in my life. But I do think that there are so many things that you did which you may not be aware of. Some of what we already talked about. But I also, when I left, I remember another key moment for me was I left school with an engineering degree. I had all this video experience because I'd probably edited, like, I don't know, 50 to 100 videos in my time at Carroll. And, half of those were projects for you. And so I had this skill set of, like, video editing, that I was like, I was an engineer by degree, but I had this like creative, like, desire and interest. And so I tried engineering out for 6 months and hated it. Like, I had high blood pressure, and, like, I was pre-hypertensive at the age of 22 or 3 or something like that. And I was like, I have to leave. And so I had just bought a drone. That was the only camera that I owned. And I was talking to you about this, and you had thrown the, like, Lake Bible Church, their women's group had they wanted to do a video, and you were like, oh, Chris, like, take this because I'm not interested in doing these anymore. And I borrowed your Canon 5D, I think, or one of the cameras you had. Yeah. And, like, so everything that I had on this first project that I did as Sky Studios, that was my production company, which was just a video thing, I
can't believe you started a competitive company.
And then stole your business right from it. But I didn't have anything. I was like, oh man, I don't know what to do for video or like any. You're like, oh, you could rent this from me. So I rented your camera, and I, like, did the project and then paid you whatever $200 for all the gear that I used. And then I had, from that money that I earned, I then bought my own camera stuff, and then slowly started working on other things. But I feel like that led into me running Sky Studios, and which grew into, like, a 6-person marketing company at one point. And we were doing all sorts of crazy stuff and, like, really cool projects. And I actually hired people that went to school for film and were good at video, like, at a much higher level than I was. But it was sweet. And it all started, like, if you go back, it was started from OASC, and, like, that was more of, like, confidence. And then there was video skills that I learned. And then I'm confident now. The role that I have at Webfoot as the marketing director, like, I got this job 2.5 years ago, and then got promoted to the management team of this, decent-sized company. And I'm the youngest person on the management team by at least 3 years or so. And some of the people are, 10 or 15 years older than me. But to me, the reason why I think I'm on there is because I have this experience being an entrepreneur and running a business for 6 years, even though on paper, like, I had to spin it down, and it was like a grind to, like, I think I probably made like $30,000 a year for every year that I did that. But I learned so much, and then it was like on my resume when I was talking to the owners of Webfoot, they were like, "Yeah, this makes perfect sense," and they brought me in. So, but that largely could be attributed to the interactions and the experience that I learned from you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? How like just different weaving through life, kind of, you pick up little things here and there, you work them into, like, your story, and then you're able to get a job based on just, like, all this random stuff accumulated. Yeah.
Totally. And then I don't know if you've thought about the other people, but without mentioning names, because I don't want to leave somebody out by accident, but I was making a list of the other people that had an encounter with Tech Crew, specifically that I know of. But there's, people that are now photographers for some of the biggest musicians on the planet or actors, and they're like deep in the film world now because of their the work that they did at OASC. And then there's also because there was that period at OASC where you then were no longer able to go, I think, because of just family commitments. And then I was like I took over running it, and I brought in more people. And those people, which also benefited from this this little crew that you formed. Now, one of them is over in Italy, and he has like his own production company making like historical documentary type stuff. And another one is in California, and he has a small production company. But there's all these people that I just think I was reflecting on this, like, man, those are the ones that I know of. And to your point, how many other people maybe weren't directly in Tech Crew, but were inspired by something that Tech Crew did or a video or whatever. And then we did like little workshops and stuff for just regular campers to get exposure to video and edit little PSAs and stuff. But yeah, I just think it's really cool. So
yeah, I don't know if we can take credit for all that. Maybe we can just say that we planted seeds and then those have grown, and they've done all the nurturing and all the
it's not,
or we can just take credit. We can just take 100% of that credit, and
100%. But that's the thing, is that that's a good point, that it's not like, it's like, how did you get to where you are? It's not like, well, somebody did this for me and boom, here I am. There's obviously a ton of work that goes into the journey of anybody, including myself. But yeah, what's the spark, And there is a lot of there's a lot of sparks that turn into nothing. So
totally. And I think that to entrepreneurship, that's what it is. It's like not giving up when those sparks do burn out or they do shift. I think you have to be very flexible in kind of the path that you're taking. I think for some people, they create a business that blows up and then, it's Amazon. But for most, you have to be very nimble, and you are a local business, and you have to find people that want to work with you and then really take care of their needs as well. Don't tell my boss this, but I still think about being an entrepreneur all the time, and I have ideas for businesses that I would like to start, or films that I'd like to make, or stuff like that. And I think ultimately I will set myself up for success in that arena down the road. But with the pandemic and certain things in play over the last couple of years, this job's been working really well for me, and I've really met some great individuals across the country based on my position and my ability to network. So it's just fascinating. I think that to your point of like applying for the job, that's an interesting process, right? Because I hadn't really applied for a job prior to Evanta. Everything I had done prior was really just self-curated for the most part. And when I went in to interview, I talked about how I was interested in sales and how I also had this video production company, and I was a professional yo-yoer. And it's like all these random things, and the guy looked at me and he's just like, so what do you want to do here? And I was like, I don't know. You tell me, like, where could my skills be beneficial? And I don't know that he necessarily placed me in the right spot, but I think over time I found what that spot was. And I'm still kind of looking for other ways to creatively challenge myself in this business. And so I've talked to, my management about what that could look like. And I think that's important, to continually look for another way to push yourself, but also to keep yourself creatively motivated and happy. Because if you, like with the wedding videos, if you start editing hours and hours of wedding videos for like 3 or 4 years or 5 years straight, they start to blend together and it all looks like the same wedding. And you kind of lose out on that spark of excitement. To your point, this is like the biggest day for these brides, right? And if you go in and you're just like, yeah, you're about to do this thing. Nope, yep, I know what's going on next. And like, oh, I'm going to stand in the right spot because I know exactly what this is going to look like. Like, it kind of takes away from like the experience for them. So it's important to find ways to keep it fresh and to make sure that you're not, a detriment or whatever.
Totally. And that's why neither one of us shoot wedding videos anymore.
Yeah, God bless the people that do.
So do you think, let's have a couple wrap-up questions here. Top 3 book recommendations or whatever type of thing you consume.
So, not to toot my own horn. I was in tag in elementary school because of math, but because I was in it for math, they made me do the reading portion, which I hated. And in 6th grade, they were having me read a book or 2 a week, and it just burned me out. So I just stopped reading and just started getting really good at Cliff's Notes or just kind of listening to conversations about the books. And don't tell my English teachers this. I don't think they can take my high school diploma away from me. But I went through.
Haven't read since grade school. Is what you're saying?
Honestly, I read some things, but not in entirety, and nothing for an enjoyment. And even in college, I was in an advanced honors reading class that we had to read 2 books a week, and they were books, and then you had to write a paper on it, and it just was not working for me, so I ended up having to drop that. But the reason I bring all that up is because up until my now 9-year-old was 4, I hadn't read a full chapter book, and then we got really into reading him books, and so I would read him Hardy Boys because that's what I knew from enjoying as a kid. Then we read a bunch of the Beverly Cleary. I think we read all of it. And then we read all the Harry Potter books. And then we read just some other random ones. And now he's part of a Bob, Battle of the Books thing for his thing. So my favorite books right now are all kids' books. We're reading Lemony Snicket, and it's a lot of fun. And I like Dave Barry. But I don't read adult books. And
that's
I think
funny.
That's okay.
Yeah, that I was going to say, it sounds like you applied. There's this other book that you probably would like called The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch. And he talks about how he got a degree in financial advising or, I don't know, some industry. Basically, he had his goal of I want to be an investment banker. And he knew exactly what he needed to get there. And he said that he'd pick up a book, he'd read the introduction and then the summary, and then he'd read the headings of each chapter, and then he'd go take the test. And he was just I don't need to get an A, I just need to get a C. That's all. I just literally just pass, because if I get this degree and I have 100% of an A versus, I think you could technically get a D plus and still pass depending on the college. He knew exactly the bar that he had to hit to get the degree. And he was his whole principle, which is Pareto's principle from a long time ago, is do 20% of the work to get 80% of the effort or the gain from that work. So he literally would be how can I do 20% of the work in this class to just get what I need from this and then move on? And he was I think it's stupid to try to do more than that. Why? What do you who cares if you got an A in your college degree for whatever thing? I got the same degree and I have the same job and I'm making more money because I'm more efficient,
Yeah,
so.
Or you don't have the same job. I went to film school and now I'm putting on events. It's completely different.
True.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That sounds like I should read it because it sounds like my life.
And it's super short because he talked about also how he didn't want to write. He tried to make it the shortest book possible because he was just people don't need to read, this novel on the principle that's supposed to be about taking shortcuts, basically.
I think my favorite essay that I wrote in college, I got a B plus on it or something. Not one of my better grades, but it was pretty high. And then under it, the professor wrote, "Did you read the book?" This is really well written, but did you read the book? Like, I have to know.
And you're like, I can't tell you.
No, I don't think so.
So last question is favorite movie of all time.
I have a couple, and that's a tough question, especially when you go to film school and you watch like hundreds, and then everyone like judges you based on like going into film school. I love Jim Carrey, I still do. I think my go-to movie would be Back to the Future, the trilogy, just because I love the nostalgia of it, but then also just kind of like the storyline and how it all ties together so nicely. But I don't think that's like the right answer in terms of like being a film major.
I mean, it's whichever movie is.
I really like Shawshank Redemption. That's
that's like the cheapest cop-out answer ever, because that is the #1 movie on IMDb. I look up all ratings. It's literally top of the 250 list. It's a fantastic movie. Yeah. Back to the Future, though, this is random, but Webfoot does an annual Christmas card every year. That's just like a silly, it could be like a parody or just like whatever, a bunch of different things. But this year's theme is Back to the Future. And I'll send you a picture of it's the business owners of Webfoot as with Marty and
Doc.
And Doc, yeah. They're like the cover of the movie. But
what are you guys?
It's just them this year. So we try to get more people on it when we can. Like last year we did Christmas Vacation was the theme.
Oh, nice.
So we had like when the cops break into the house and there's like the whole family. So we like Photoshopped different heads of different employees on there. But
that's great.
It's just a fun little Webfoot thing that happens every year. Anyways, if people want to get in touch with you or they have a question, what is your preferred method of contacting you?
I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way.
Greg Winterrowd on LinkedIn. Is there any other Greg Winterrowds in the world that you're aware of?
There is one that's like a second or third cousin, I think, but I think I'm the one.
The one that works at Evanta is you. Yeah. Cool. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation, Greg. Thanks for taking the time to chat, and we'll see you soon.
No, this meant a lot, Chris. I really appreciate you calling me out and bringing all this stuff to light and really diving in deep to our friendship in the last 20 years.
Is that how long it's been?
I mean, maybe
would have been like 2006.
15
would have been
years.
Yeah. 15. I was like shocked when I realized that I'm almost at my 10-year graduation of college, because we had our 10-year for high school, and that was about 4 years ago, so it's coming up.
Yeah, my 20 is coming up next year, which is bizarre.
Yeah, or we have 3 kids now, and I was like, geez, I remember like only like really old dads have 3 kids. Like,
right?
It's just like, I remember meeting people that had 3 kids when I was in high school, and I was like, geez, like,
you're old.
You must be about to retire, or like, and I'm not anywhere close. So. Anyways, it was good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.